Hello and welcome to Module 1.3, Planning Capacity and Resources, together with Studio CX. In today's presentation, you'll understand the essential data which will become the base on which you will formulate your calculations. You'll learn the essentials for planning the capacity of your employees and the calculations necessary for planning how many employees you're going to need to support your customers. You can lean on the example provided by Studio CX and play around with the data yourself to give you an idea based on your own data how many employees you will need. Additionally, there are an array of resource planning tools available on the market, and we recommend that you take a look at a product that may be suitable for your business. For the purpose of this project, we're using simple techniques and formulas in Excel to calculate our capacity. The following slide deck is structured in three parts. Firstly, we'll look at the specific data required that will define our capacity requirements. We'll talk you through the information that will give you a greater understanding of what is needed to plan capacity in your own teams. And to finish, we'll run through the essential calculations for planning resources in your support organization. It is data that underpins your capacity and resource planning, so we'll take you through the data that defines your support, how this data will help you to plan, and what this data tells us about the costs. Looking back on the assessment you have made when starting out in this process, you most likely already know the level of support required for supporting your primary customer. You understand what your competitors are doing, and you know where your service needs to be in order to match or even beat them. Therefore, and although at this point you may not have clearly defined your support targets, you'll have a good indication of the required goals, targets, and any external facing agreements you make with your customers. Now, the data required can be broken down into three main areas. Those areas being workload, time, and promises. So here's what you'll need to know. The total workload expected. This is the total number of inbound and outbound contacts via every channel that you support or plan to support. Business operating hours. How many hours of the day is your support available, as well as the average time spent handling requests by channel. And the promises you make to your customers. For example, if you tell your customers they will receive a response within one business day, you'll need to ensure that you have the capacity in place to achieve that 100% of the times. When volumes and average handle time per case is understood, you'll also need to consider the additional administration time, often referred to as call wrap. This is the time a case may require further investigation or something needs manual adjustment. Based on our experience at Studio CX, we include an additional 10 to 20% of resource time, which is solely allocated to administration post-customer interaction. In addition, a full working day may be 7 hours in length. However, remember to factor in lunch, breaks, meetings, other projects being worked on when allocating resource time. So how is it that this data will help you to plan your resources and understand the capacity? You see, volume is certainly the easiest manner in which to plan resources. To put it very simply, if a total of 100 contacts are received per day, and you plan for 2 support employees, each employee will be required to handle 50 cases per day. When you understand how many contacts are likely to arrive, and on which days of the week or month, you will have a decent idea of how many employees will be needed to manage that incoming volume. Therefore, you need to establish the total incoming and outgoing volumes. If you don't have access to such data, we would suggest to plan additional resources in the form of temporary workers, for example, and to closely monitor your volumes weekly and even daily, working outwards from there and planning ahead. When you factor in average handling time per case, you're able to demonstrate what handling 50 cases in terms of time really looks like. Let's go back to those 50 cases per day. In each case, handle time is an average of 7.5 minutes. You times your 50 cases by 7.5 to see what that is in hours. Simply divide by 60, giving you 6 hours and 15 minutes. This is the total time that your support employee will need to spend per day on handling customer interactions. And if presenting expectations to your customers, such as a promise to return within 24 hours, then you'll need to ensure that the expectation is met. Returning to our 100 cases per day, it's imperative that those 100 cases are handled within the agreed time. Once backlogs start to build, it's difficult for teams to achieve this target. Therefore, to account for this type of expectation, you'll need to make sure that 100 cases can be handled by 2 employees without fail every day. If this service level is continuously breached, it's time to review the current capacity and plan for additional resources. On the previous slide, we mentioned to consider breaks, meetings, and projects when planning the availability of your employees. Another factor of significant importance is the maximum time in which a support employee should spend solely on handling customer contacts. At Studio CX, and although there's no standard and this differs largely across industry, we recommend a maximum capacity of 65%. That means an employee should rarely spend more than 65% of their working day handling customer contacts. Anywhere between 40 and 60 is our recommended guide, leaving room for other tasks that contribute to a successful operation. Resource and capacity data allows us to define the level of support we plan to offer our customers and at what cost to the business. You see, with the ever-increasing customer expectations and the ability to reach customers at a global scale, a competitive support offering needs to keep up with the demand. And so, in order to compete at scale, it's important to meet your customer expectations with every single interaction. Customers expect responses immediately. In today's world, even offering a 1 business day turnaround can be perceived as ancient service. Thinking back to our 100 cases per day, with this in mind, 2 employees could prove to be quite a shortfall when reviewing the competition. Additionally, at what times of the day is your support operation going to be available? Will it be closed after 5 o'clock? Will it be a 24-hour operation to cater for the global demand? Which channels will be supported? Will you have employees handling multiple channels simultaneously, such as chat and phone? Most likely, this will not be possible, thus increasing the need for an additional resource. You see, to actually provide best-in-class support, you'll need to consider the many aspects that contribute to this, and ultimately, it boils down to what a business is prepared to spend on supporting its customers. When adding in these factors, we significantly increase the resource costs, and with a potential outcome of simply meeting customer expectations. With technology, however, there is relief. A high percentage of customers will now interact with help materials, provided they're very informative and well structured. In addition, there's been significant developments in AI, with machine learning chatbots capable of managing simple tasks. The industry is likely to develop further in the future, potentially taking more load away from traditional support teams. So moving on to the pillars of capacity, over the remaining slides we're going to take you through the reference material that we have provided and explain in detail what the numbers represent and how the calculations are made. Firstly, we'll take you through the importance of your operations and setup. Then, calculating the total volumes across multiple channels and an average handle time. Business operations are directly linked to the capacity that can be handled by support employees. So you'll need to consider operational requirements when planning resources. This is a table taken from the supporting calculation file, which you should definitely review and play around with the data. Now, in terms of operational requirements, we need to firstly grasp the hours that your support center will be open to your customers. In this example, we've used a 9 to 5 standard 8-hour operation. Additionally, which days of the week will support be available? Is it Monday to Friday, or is it 7 days a week? In our example here, it's a standard Monday to Friday. Then, what is the standard working week for an employee in the country of your operation? Is it 8 hours, 5 days a week, or maybe it's higher? What is the standard work week? We want to take into consideration local employment laws and understand if we're employing full-time employees as well as part-time employees if necessary. The data should be considered as the foundation in your resource planning and will give you a very high-level overview of how many employees you will need as a bare minimum and just to maintain the minimum level of support. Now remember to keep in mind your service level agreements. The higher the service level, the more time you will depend on available support employees. For example, if you expect to deliver a service level of 80% of calls answered within 20 seconds, it's unlikely this target will be achieved with one agent if there's 15 calls in an hour with an average handle time of 4 minutes. In the same manner, if you provide multiple avenues for your customers to reach you, as such by chat, phone, and email, it can be challenging for support employees to juggle these channels at the same time. So it's recommended that you specifically, with real-time support, such as chat and telephone, your employees are assigned to a specific channel. In the capacity and resource planning document we've provided, you'll notice the number of dedicated contact channels is highlighted in red. This simply means that if you plan to offer more than one real-time support channel and your resource requirements are less than 2 employees, the number shown here could have more weight over the calculated output. When calculating the total volume going through your support center, it's imperative that every contact via every channel is accounted for. This includes in and outbound calls, every ticket and email, essentially any task that requires your employees to spend time supporting your customers. After-call work and general administration should also be factored into the volumes. What this refers to is cases that require additional work post a phone call, a chat, or an email, such as updating customer records or changing order information. Although challenging to measure accurately, we tend to allocate around 10 to 20% of the overall contact volumes to administration. And finally, to continue to have a good understanding of volumes on which days of the week or month volume increases or decreases, we recommend keeping and reviewing data on daily, weekly, and monthly timeframes. Now, depending on the analytical capability of your support tool or tools it may be integrated with, you may need to calculate the average handle time of your support requests manually when seeking an average across channels. Again, we'll go back to the capacity and resource planning file, and what you'll see is the volume is also displayed as a percentage split by channel. There's two benefits to this information. Firstly, you get a good understanding of your customer's channel preference and can allocate more resources to the channel that requires. And secondly, the capacity estimate is more accurate because the average time is weighted across each channel. You see, it's important to weight your average handle time because the average handle time can vary considerably between contact channels. For example, if I take an average of the handle time by channel, the output given does not consider the volume received via that specific channel, ultimately skewing your result. As mentioned earlier, we make a 10% adjustment for call wrap and allocate the same average handle time as a phone call. So we'll round up the capacity and resource planning by covering the following areas. How to calculate the total workload. We'll take a look at the total time and how we can get resource output. And we'll briefly cover converting your data if it needs presenting on a high level. The total workload in your support organization is achieved using the following formula. Total volume times the average case handle time. As the average case handle time is reported in seconds, you'll receive the total time in the same format. In the following slides, we'll run through the conversion of this data. If reporting over different time frames such as days, weeks, and months, you'll want to use the same formula but utilizing the daily, weekly, or monthly total contact volume. In order to establish the resources required, we use the following formula. Total workload divided by an agent's capacity. And remember, in this example, we've based our agent capacity on a number of factors, including lunch breaks, projects, and a maximum utilization of 65%. The capacity of your employees is a business decision, and the example we've provided is simply a guide based on best practice. In our example, we have an output of 1.83 required resources. If we were to strictly follow this number, we'd be looking to hire one full-time employee and a part-time employee that could work, say, up to 30 hours per week, or potentially two part-time employees that split those hours between the time. However, we recommend using this output as a guide, and in a support operation that received this level of volume, we see the need for two full-time employees. This calculation does not consider employee holiday or sickness, so an operation of this size can be very vulnerable in these cases. In smaller organizations where this vulnerability is apparent, we recommend a staff contingency plan, potentially having a pool of part-time employees that can be called upon when required. Presenting your data on a high level may require converting it to ensure it makes sense. For example, stakeholders may not see relevance or benefit when presenting time in seconds. Instead, you'll want to convert that to an appropriate measurement such as hours. In our example, we'll be using hours as the appropriate measurement. This formula remains constant because there is always the same amount of seconds in every hour. Therefore, to convert your seconds to hours, you take the total number of seconds and divide that by 3,600, converting those seconds into hours. In our example, we now have a good high-level understanding of the total daily, weekly, and monthly workload, as well as the total capacity of our support employees. And it doesn't take a mathematician to establish that with 8 hours workload and employee capacity at 4 hours, we need 2 employees to support our customers. And so we've covered the 3 main components of capacity and resource planning. We hope you found value in this presentation, and we recommend inputting the data from your own organization into our spreadsheet to find out whether your support organization is at the correct resource level. In lesson 1.4, we'll be covering the evaluation and recommendation to our stakeholders. So jump over to that next presentation to get the full rundown. We look forward to seeing you there.